Breaking news reports claim the FBI has launched an investigation involving Argentina's Football Federation. It sounds unbelievable at first, but the timing is what makes this story even more shocking. This didn't come out during a quiet period or after the tournament had ended. Instead, it surfaced only days after Argentina's dramatic and highly controversial victory over Egypt, a match that had already triggered massive debate online, with many fans accusing the officials of favoring Argentina. As soon as news of the investigation broke, people immediately began linking it to everything that had happened on the pitch. Social media exploded with questions about the controversial fouls, the disallowed Egyptian goal, the VAR decisions that seemed to benefit Argentina, and now an FBI investigation involving the country's football authorities. But before anyone jumps to conclusions, it's important to understand what this investigation is actually about, because the reality is quite different from what many people are assuming. Let's break down the facts carefully. According to Argentine newspaper La Nación, the FBI, working alongside the U.S. Department of Justice, has opened a preliminary investigation into the Argentine Football Association, better known as the AFA, and its president, Claudio Tapia. The inquiry centers on possible financial crimes, including suspected fraud and money laundering connected to activities that passed through the United States. Reports suggest investigators are tracing more than $300 million that allegedly moved through American banks and financial institutions. Among the names mentioned are Citibank, Bank of America, and J.P. Morgan. At the center of the investigation is a South Florida company called Torprodent LLC, based in Aventura, which reportedly managed the Federation's international commercial contracts. The main question investigators are trying to answer is whether these financial transactions were structured in a way that concealed the true purpose or destination of the money, potentially violating U.S. law. It's important to remember that these are allegations currently being examined. At this point, nothing has been proven and no conclusions have been reached. What makes this entire situation even more remarkable is the timing. According to La Nación, these reported investigative steps were taking place while Argentina was still competing in the tournament. During Argentina's round of 32 victory over Cape Verde, FBI agents and prosecutors from the Department of Justice were reportedly questioning Argentine sports businessman Guillermo Tofoni. At the same time, AFA President Claudio Tapia was in Miami supporting the national team as it continued its World Cup campaign. Around the period of the Egypt match, investigators also reportedly conducted a 3-hour video conference with Tofoni from Miami. It's an extraordinary timeline when you think about it. While Argentina's players were celebrating victories and advancing further into the competition, U.S. authorities were reportedly collecting testimony and reviewing financial matters linked to the federation. On one side, the focus was entirely on football and the team's success. On the other, investigators were reportedly examining financial records and interviewing witnesses. Two very different stories unfolding simultaneously, during the same tournament, in the same country, and at almost exactly the same time. Now here's where the story becomes even more unusual, because the reported financial details have drawn just as much attention as the investigation itself. This isn't only about complicated business structures, shell companies, or offshore transactions. According to La Nación's reporting, the AFA allegedly transferred around $340,000 to the family of a man described as a spiritual guide who regularly traveled with Argentina's national team during major tournaments, including this World Cup. The report claims that senior figures within the federation believed he brought the team good fortune. Investigators reportedly found that the money was sent to his son through 17 separate wire transfers of exactly $20,000 each. Beyond that, the same reporting points to another $468,000 allegedly paid to a company connected to AFA treasurer Pablo Tovigino, along with an additional $40,000 sent to one of his business associates. Authorities are also reportedly examining a separate transfer of approximately $2.3 million routed to a U.S.-registered company linked to an individual said to have no clear financial profile. When investigators combined these transactions with reports of nearly $42 million moving through Florida-based shell companies and at least $16.5 million in luxury-related spending, they allegedly identified around $90 million in financial activity that they believe deserves closer examination. What makes these allegations stand out even more is Argentina's strict currency regulations, where ordinary citizens face heavy restrictions when trying to access U.S. dollars. while these reported international transfers involved much larger sums. Journalist Nicole S. Pizzi, who first reported many of these claims, stated that investigators were already reviewing at least $260 million and suggested that figure could increase as the investigation continues. According to the Miami Herald, what began as a single report has now expanded into a broader international investigation centered in Miami, where authorities are reportedly examining shell companies, offshore transactions, and financial movements they believe may have misrepresented the true origin and destination of the funds moving through American banks. All of this unfolds against the backdrop of one of the tournament's most controversial teams. Argentina has spent much of the competition surrounded by debate. Critics pointed to Lionel Messi's challenge on Algeria's captain that escaped disciplinary action despite calls for a card. Others revived memories of the 2022 World Cup, where Argentina received a record number of penalties and Messi's handball against the Netherlands avoided punishment. Then came the heated match against Egypt, which sparked accusations of biased officiating and even led to formal complaints asking FIFA to review the refereeing decisions. Soon afterward, FIFA appointed an all-Argentine officiating crew for the France vs. Morocco quarter-final, adding even more fuel to an already heated discussion. Now, alongside all of those football-related controversies, the host country's own FBI is reportedly investigating financial matters involving the federation governing the defending world champions while the tournament is still underway. Whether connected or not, the timing has created difficult optics for a team that many online already believe has benefited from favorable circumstances. Argentina remains one of football's biggest global attractions, but now the spotlight includes an ongoing federal financial investigation alongside its pursuit of another World Cup title. There is also an important historical reason why many observers are paying close attention. This is far from the first time American authorities have investigated financial activity connected to international football. Back in 2015, it was the FBI and the U.S. Department of Justice that uncovered what became the biggest corruption scandal in FIFA's history. That investigation resulted in numerous indictments against football officials, many from South American federations, involving allegations such as racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. A common element throughout that case was the movement of football-related money through American banks. The investigation permanently changed FIFA's leadership and played a major role in ending Sepp Blatter's era at the top of world football. Because of that history, the fact that the same American agencies are once again examining the financial activities of a South American football organization during a World Cup hosted on U.S. soil has naturally drawn widespread attention. Many people see echoes of the past, even though this investigation is still in its earliest stages and no conclusions have been reached. Before going any further, it's important to separate two completely different issues because this is where many discussions become misleading. The FBI's reported investigation is focused entirely on financial matters. It concerns bank transfers, shell companies, financial records, and whether any U.S. laws may have been violated during those transactions. It is not an investigation into match fixing, refereeing decisions, VAR calls, or the results of Argentina's matches. There have been no reports suggesting that American investigators are examining controversial penalties, the disallowed Egyptian goal, or any on-field decisions. Those debates belong to football, while this inquiry concerns financial activity. Blending the two into one large conspiracy is not supported by the information that has been reported so far. Another point that deserves equal attention is that no criminal charges have been filed. Neither in the United States nor in Argentina has anyone been formally charged in connection with this investigation. At this stage, prosecutors are simply determining whether enough evidence exists to justify moving forward. An investigation should never be confused with a conviction, an indictment, or proof of wrongdoing. Responding through a representative in the United States, Tomás Regalado emphasized that investigative measures alone do not establish responsibility or guilt, and that principle of presumed innocence applies here just as it would in any other legal matter. It's also worth mentioning that Claudio Tapia has faced a separate legal issue in Argentina involving allegations related to tax and social security administration, but that matter is entirely unrelated to the reported Miami investigation, and Argentine courts allowed him to travel. Although several stories are circulating at once, they should not be treated as one single case, even with all of those important qualifications. The situation still carries significant consequences because reputational damage often begins long before any legal verdict is reached. The defending World Cup champions are competing for another title while the president of their football federation is reportedly the subject of a financial investigation in the same country hosting the tournament. That alone is an extraordinary situation. Regardless of whether the investigation ultimately leads anywhere, it adds another layer of scrutiny to a team that has already spent much of the tournament surrounded by controversy. Throughout the competition, debates over officiating, VAR decisions, and allegations of favoritism have followed Argentina from match to match. Now, although the financial inquiry is completely separate from those football-related controversies, the combination of both stories creates an image that continues to generate questions. A federation accused of benefiting from controversial refereeing decisions while simultaneously facing reports of a federal financial investigation involving hundreds of millions of dollars is inevitably going to face increased public attention. Fair or unfair, perceptions are often shaped long before legal processes are completed. Legal experts quoted in the reporting note that investigations involving multiple countries, numerous financial institutions, and large volumes of transactions can take years before reaching any final conclusion. That means this story is unlikely to disappear before the tournament ends. Argentina is preparing for its quarter-final clash against Switzerland while Claudio Tapia remains in the United States supporting the national team. At the same time, investigators are reportedly continuing their work in Miami, reviewing documents and following financial leads. In other words, two separate stories are unfolding side by side. One is being written on the football pitch, where Argentina continues its pursuit of another World Cup trophy. The other is taking place in offices and courtrooms where financial investigators are attempting to determine whether any laws were broken. Eventually, one story will end with football's biggest prize being awarded, while the other may continue long afterward as authorities complete their work. So despite all the online speculation, this investigation is not about a controversial penalty, a red card, or a VAR decision. It is about reported financial transactions worth more than $300 million. A Florida-based company, allegations involving unusual payments, and an ongoing federal inquiry into the governing body of one of the world's most successful football nations. Whatever the final outcome may be, it has already become one of the most remarkable off-field storylines of this World Cup. Now the question is yours: do you believe this investigation could develop into a major scandal? Or will it ultimately end without any formal charges? Share your thoughts below, and stay tuned because with the FBI, FIFA, and the World Cup all part of the same story, this is a case that many people will be watching closely.